this is super nice. Victory.
Sometimes simply being present for another person is the most meaningful act of care. The story of Deep Delivery can be understood less as a narrative about a sudden encounter and more as an exploration of recognition, vulnerability, and the ways people search for connection when they feel uncertain about expressing their authentic selves. At its emotional center is Shyla, a young woman who begins the story defined by hesitation, privacy, and a desire to understand herself beyond the expectations that have shaped her life. Although the premise uses the language of surprise and discovery, the deeper theme is the experience of being seen at a moment when one is not fully prepared to reveal personal desires, hopes, or insecurities. For many queer women, stories of self-discovery often involve this same emotional tension, the feeling of carrying a private part of oneself while wondering what might happen if another person recognizes it. The fear is not always simply rejection, but the uncertainty of whether one will still be accepted once the hidden parts of the self become visible. Shyla's journey reflects this broader human experience of moving from secrecy towards self-understanding, and the connection she develops with Nikki becomes meaningful because it represents a moment where vulnerability is met with recognition rather than dismissal. The film's emotional framework invites viewers to consider how many women, especially queer women, have learned to carefully manage how they present themselves to the world. Social expectations frequently encourage women to be composed, accommodating, and easy to understand. They are often rewarded for being responsible and restrained, while their personal desires, ambitions, and emotional needs are treated as secondary. Shyla's initial uncertainty reflects the impact of these pressures. She is not simply discovering another person. She is discovering a part of herself that she has kept separate from her public identity. This internal conflict is familiar to many LGBTQ+ viewers because queer identity often develops through a process of questioning, reflection, and negotiation with the messages received from family, culture, and society. The challenge is not only determining what one feels, but also understanding whether there is a safe place for those feelings to exist. The relationship between Shyla and Nikki can therefore be interpreted as a story about emotional permission. Nikki represents someone who appears more confident and experienced, someone who has already traveled a path that Shyla is beginning to explore. However, the importance of their connection comes from the fact that Nikki is not simply a guide or a symbol of confidence. She is also a person capable of empathy, curiosity, and emotional connection. Their interactions work because they are not based solely on difference, but on the recognition of shared humanity. Nikki sees something in Shyla that Shyla herself may not yet fully understand, a person who deserves to be accepted without apology. This dynamic reflects a common experience within queer communities, where people often find support through relationships with others who have navigated similar questions of identity and belonging. Many LGBTQ+ individuals have relied on friendships, mentors, and chosen family structures to provide the understanding that traditional social systems sometimes fail to offer. These relationships are not valuable because they replace all other connections, but because they create spaces where people can explore themselves without constantly defending their existence. The connection between the two women can be viewed through this lens of emotional discovery. It is about the importance of encountering someone who does not require an explanation before offering compassion. A significant aspect of the story is the contrast between how the women initially see themselves and how they come to understand themselves through their interaction. Shyla begins from a place of uncertainty. She is cautious, private, and perhaps unsure whether she has the confidence to express what she wants from life and from relationships. This emotional state resonates with many queer women who have experienced periods of questioning or concealment. Growing up in environments where heterosexuality is often assumed as the default can create a feeling of being out of step with the world around them. Some people learn to silence their own feelings because they do not yet have the language or support needed to understand them. The process of accepting one's identity can involve recognizing that the problem was never the feelings themselves, but the social pressure that made those feelings seem impossible or unsafe. Nikki's role in the story represents the possibility of affirmation. Rather than reinforcing shame or judgment, the connection between the two women allows Shyla to see herself differently. This does not mean that another person creates her identity. Rather, meaningful relationships can help people recognize truths that were already present within themselves. This distinction is important because queer stories are often misunderstood when they are framed as someone being changed by another person. Authentic identity is not created by outside influence. Instead, supportive relationships provide the confidence necessary for individuals to acknowledge what they already know about themselves. The film's emotional appeal comes from this idea that connection can become a mirror through which people finally recognize their own worth. The story also raises questions about how society responds to women's emotional and romantic autonomy. Historically, relationships between women have often been misunderstood, minimized, or treated as less significant than relationships involving men. Lesbian relationships have frequently faced two contradictory forms of social treatment: erasure, where they are ignored or dismissed, and sensationalization, where they are treated primarily as something unusual or provocative. Both approaches deny queer women the complexity granted to other forms of human connection. A more thoughtful portrayal recognizes that lesbian relationships involve the same elements found in any meaningful relationship: trust, uncertainty, communication, affection, conflict, growth, and mutual understanding. By focusing on the emotional journey of its characters, Deep Delivery can be interpreted as challenging the idea that relationships between women exist outside ordinary human experiences. Instead, it suggests that queer women's connections deserve to be understood with the same seriousness and respect given to all relationships. This perspective is particularly important because representation is not simply about showing that queer people exist. Representation also involves showing queer characters as complete individuals with histories, emotions, contradictions, and personal growth. Shyla and Nikki are not merely defined by their relationship with each other. They represent two people navigating questions of identity, confidence, loneliness, and belonging. Their connection becomes significant because it allows both characters to move beyond isolation. Shyla's journey reflects the process of becoming more honest with herself, while Nikki's presence suggests that confidence does not eliminate the human need for connection. Even people who appear secure may still carry private struggles and emotional needs. This idea challenges the common assumption that there is a simple divide between people who are confident and people who are uncertain. In reality,